a thing in Israel that is very small. There's only 7.5 to 8 million people approximately.
Okay.
So everybody knows everyone, and if you meet someone that you never met before, you can talk 2 minutes about the army, or 2 minutes about school, or 2 minutes about work, and you figure out that you have the same friends in common. You know someone in common.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like someone knows someone that you know, mutual contacts.
For
Yeah.
sure.
That's kind of nice. I sort of like that feeling of community and just being able to open up and be yourself with strangers, but then they're not strangers once you meet them. So you just made a new friend.
That's exactly how it is. Like, I couldn't have said it better. It's exactly like you feel this sense of like brotherhood wherever you go. You could start a conversation, or you feel togetherness. You don't feel.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Immigrants of Canada, a show that shares immigrant stories of hope, struggle, victory, and everything in between. I'm your host, Suzette Smith, and today I'm chatting with my new friends, Britt and Tom Goldenberg, who are from Israel. Shalom, welcome Britt and Tom, welcome to Immigrants of Canada.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, shalom.
I love using that word, shalom. It's like, I don't know too much Hebrew, like maybe 5 phrases or 5 words, but I love shalom because it means peace, hello, and goodbye, right?
True.
Yeah. Well, anyways, thank you for being on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes. So Tom, you are from Israel, and so are you, Britt. You're actually from Israel too, but your story is a little bit different than Tom's. So Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Israel is like?
I was born in Israel. Israel is more like it's very multicultural country, sometimes reminding of Canada. There's a lot of people from all around the world who lives there. Some people from Europe, some people from it can be Asia or Africa, and so many countries, so many people is coming together to the same small country. So it sometimes feels like Canada, but it's like, you can feel that there's a lot of people coming from all around the world, and everybody's really good friends. It's very open culture, so it's very easy to talk to each other, and it's easy to greet or to talk about people in the street, random people in the street, about any subject that you want. It can be from just like regular the weather, and up to talking to them about their kids while you don't, and it's the first time you met them, so it feels like a warm culture that everybody like knows everyone, not really knows them necessarily, but knows them like as a friend, or as like as a far away brother. So this is how I grew up. This is how we grew up in my neighborhood, and everyone, and
Mm-hmm. And which city did you grow up in?
I grew up in a small city called Ariel. When I was a kid, it was just a town. Now it's like a small city.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, in the Samaria, in between Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, just in between.
Oh, okay, cool. In 2019, I went with my parents to Israel, and so we went. The only places that I really know of are Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and then we also went to the Sea of Galilee.
Oh, nice. That's
Galilee?
nice.
Is that the town Galilee?
Yeah.
Okay, Galilee. Oh, and we also went to Caesarea.
Okay. Yeah, Caesarea. Yeah. Okay, Caesarea. Yeah.
Did I say that right? Or yeah.
I think
Okay.
Say it in English. In Hebrew, it's Caesarea.
Yeah, it's from the word. This is coming from the word Caesar. So yeah, it's up after the name of the Caesar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your hometown is in between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv.
Yeah, just in the mountains of Samaria.
Okay, cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And from the sounds of it, Israel is very community based then.
Yeah, that's
definitely
true.
I would say that.
Yeah. Quite different than Canada in that sense, right?
Yeah. I always personally notice the difference of, growing up here, but coming from there in a sense. So whenever we took vacations, I would notice this like sense of countrywide community where everyone is just, very communicative. Like Tom was saying, you could approach anyone on the street. Everyone's very approachable. They start conversations so naturally as strangers, even if you're standing in line at the grocery market, at the supermarket, or if you're in an elevator or just on the street or whatever. In Canada, it feels a little bit more individualized. Yeah. But that also, I would say, depends on province. Like some provinces are colder, some provinces are warmer. So Canada's a big country. Israel is not a big country.
Yeah. This is part of the thing in Israel that is very small. There's only 7.5 to 8 million people approximately. Okay. So everybody knows everyone, and if you meet someone that you never met before, you can talk 2 minutes about the army, or 2 minutes about school, or 2 minutes about work, and you figure out that you have the same friends in common. You know someone in common.
Yeah. So it's like someone knows someone that mutual contacts.
Sure.
That's kind of nice. I sort of like that feeling of community. And just being able to open up and be yourself with strangers, but then they're not strangers once you meet them. So you just made a new friend.
That's exactly how it is. Like I couldn't have said it better. It's exactly like you feel this sense of like brotherhood wherever you go. You could start a conversation, or you feel togetherness. You don't feel like it's like when you think of New York, for example, and you think of that individualized, sense of like motion in the streets, that's the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, totally. And so then you would say that this is like the collective mindset is very community based. It's very we instead of me. What other cultural mindsets are there in Israel?
I would say, just to add something that popped up now to the community-based mindset, if, for example, you would see something that's like not appropriate in the street, I would say in Israel, very easily people would get involved and say, hey, don't do this. This is not okay. Whatever it is, like where
they feel for each other.
Yeah, they feel for each other. They take care of each other. Where maybe in Canada, I would say people are more reserved. If they see like a couple fighting, that they're not going to stick around to make sure, there's no abuse or whatever. They're just going to keep going.
I see. Okay. So that's common then. So if two people are having an argument in the street, then it's common for outsiders to come in and just kind of see what's going on.
Say, for example, just as an example, not that this happens all the time, but if there was something inappropriate, like any type of abuse or anything like, not okay. Yeah. I feel like in Israel, people would like get involved. Like
they feel free.
Free to get involved.
Yeah.
There's no like
barrier.
Yeah.
That's holding them back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
To the good and to the bad.
The good and to the bad. Sometimes you feel like, stay out of my business.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say, so it's like I grew up in a big family, for instance. And with that, sometimes people cross each other's boundaries, right? It's like everyone kind of knows what's going on with other people in the family. And it can be a good thing. And then other times it's like, Yeah,
it feels like, hey, you don't have a right to ask this,
Yeah.
But in Israel, people just take
the boundaries are quite vague, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. And so, Tom, growing up in Israel, what was your childhood like growing up in Israel?
So, because I grew up in a small city that it's even smaller than like the bigger Israel, and there was only, I think it was like 20,000 people. So everybody literally knew everyone. Like I grew up in a small neighborhood, but I knew all the people all around the city. And you always know someone, even if you don't know him, you know the family, you know his brother, you know his sister. They grew up with you. There is only one high school in all over the city, so everybody goes to the same high school. Everybody knows each other. I found it really fascinating because I grew up a lot in the streets. I wasn't afraid too much. Like, I was outside all the time, and I was coming back home like late at night when I was like younger. I'll say like 8 or 9, when I'm quite young. You felt safe other than the roads and the cars that we were afraid of. Everything else you felt safe. You didn't feel that someone can harm you on purpose or trying to take advantage or something, like we did felt safe with my friends, with my my neighborhood. We were like a big group of kids playing every night, hide and seek, and and we spend a lot of time outside, to be honest.
Yeah. That sounds like the life though.
Yeah,
I
it
like
was really
that.
cool.
It's different than this day and age where we have technology, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think today is a bit different than when I
yeah.
grew up, because the end of the day it was the 90s, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it's quite different today than it was then. But this is what I remember from my childhood. That this was magical because we were outside and with friends all the time and playing, and
Oh,
yeah,
that sounds really nice. And
yeah.
so when you became older, did you move to any other city or did you always stay in your
No,
hometown?
I always lived in Israel. Like in when I lived in Israel, I always lived in Ariel, like in this small city. Uh, Only when I left outside of Israel, was the first time that I live outside of Israel, and I've been in a big city. But I always lived in the same city. I never lived in a different city like Tel Aviv or like Jerusalem. A lot of people, when they finish the army or whatever, we get to it in a second, they go live in different places like bigger cities like maybe Haifa or maybe Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, and maybe in the south. But no, I only lived in my hometown until I left when I was like older.
Okay, cool. And so before we get into the IDF, uh, just some things I wanted to ask. So when I was in Israel, we didn't stay much in Tel Aviv. We literally landed in Tel Aviv. And then unfortunately, we just went straight to Jerusalem. So we didn't really have a chance to explore Tel Aviv. And however, I heard that Jerusalem is more like the old city. It's very rich with history, biblical history. Um, and it's the capital of Israel, correct?
Yeah.
Correct?
Or
Yeah.
is it Tel Aviv?
No,
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem
That's
is
what I thought. Okay. And then Tel Aviv is more like it's got I've heard, now feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard it's kind of got that more Los Angeles feeling or New York feeling, like it's a big city. There's just tons of diversity, different mindsets. Just the vibe is completely different. And it's also like located on the Mediterranean too. So it even has that coastal vibe. Is that
exactly.
true?
So that's true because Jerusalem and Tel Aviv are two different cities.
Yeah.
And
I love both of those cities, but for so many separate reasons.
yeah. So when I grew up, we always used to go to Tel Aviv because it's more, I'll say, liberal. Like in Jerusalem, now when I'm older, I know there is some areas in Jerusalem is much different. Because in Jerusalem, you have all the big religious like people, right? All the religion people go to, and everybody lives there. Like if it's the Orthodox or the Muslims or the Christians, everybody lives together. It's a more holy city. Everybody, you feel like it's a holy city. When you go in the streets, you feel holy. I'm pretty
There's also that syndrome that people have.
Yeah,
Jerusalem
syndrome. People say, yeah.
What's that?
Say.
I've never heard of this.
So Jerusalem syndrome is it's like a type of syndrome that sometimes happen to people who comes to Jerusalem. I think it's one of the only cities in the world that have a syndrome of their own. When you come to the city, some people sometimes feel like they are the Messiah, and they get like I'll say confused a little bit. Sometimes they get like after a couple of days, if it doesn't pass. So they just take them to, I think, to look at them in like
to make sure they're okay.
mental.
Okay.
So yeah, but it's called like Jerusalem syndrome because it happened to some people who comes to Jerusalem to figure out they are the Messiah.
I think those are like extreme cases, but I think definitely like there's this feeling of holiness.
Mm-hmm.
So the big difference in between the two cities is like in Jerusalem, when I grew up, you did felt that it's more holy. They don't have the beach there because in Tel Aviv you have the beach. There's a huge diversity, I'll say, of people in Tel Aviv. So you can find also the Orthodox people, but you can also find the gay parade every year, and you can see like the big one of the biggest, like I'll say, army bases in the center of Tel Aviv. But just across it, you can see like the biggest mall of Israel is in Tel Aviv. So that's funny because there's so many culturals in Tel Aviv. It's way more diversity. When I grew up, I used to go to Tel Aviv all the time because no matter where you come from, if you come from a small city or if you come from a big city, or if you Orthodox, or even if you are like a regular person, you'll find your place in Tel Aviv. No matter how regular or odd you think you are, you can find your place in Tel Aviv. Everybody can find their place. Jerusalem is also unique, but I felt as a kid that Jerusalem is more like the old city, the ancient city, you know, like Tel Aviv is more like the crazy sister, you know, who's going to the parties. She's partying all the time. It's open 24/7, so you can find yourself going around Tel Aviv. Even if it's 4 a.m., you can find party or food. The food is always open, you know, while Jerusalem is falling asleep around 11 or 12, and then it's waking up again around. But as I said, when I grew up, I found that in Jerusalem there's a lot of fascinating bars and clubs. It's just a lot of those places is underground, not on purpose, just like they found themselves, those people found themselves underground. And this is the scene, you know, this is the scene in Jerusalem.
Yeah. The thing is that Tel Aviv is the most vegan city in the world. Yeah. So it's super, super progressive. It's
most
very
vegan
liberal.
City?
Yeah, the most vegan city in the world when it comes to restaurants, and also vegans per capita. And just it's so progressive. Even they have one of the largest gay pride parades in the world. True. So there's just so many people come from all over. It's such a party city, such a modern metropolitan city.
Mm-hmm. No matter who you are or where you're from, you'll find your place. For sure. You can find your small niche or your small place in Tel Aviv.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying that. So going back then to the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, Tom, you experienced that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what it is and what you did in the IDF?
So let me just say in advance that the IDF is something that it's a mandatory service that everybody who finished high school age 18, the IDF, or like I'll say recruiting to the IDF, it's both for boys and both for girls. So the boys serve for 3 years and the girls serve for 2 years. I think in the last couple of years they tried to make it equal. So I think they took a little bit less than the boys and put a little bit more months. But in general, the law is like 3 years for the boys, 2 years for the girls. Everybody have to serve in the IDF unless you have a serious, I'll say,
unless you're exempt.
Yeah, exempt. Unless you're exempt, if you have like a issue that you cannot
physical or mental illness or
exactly
problem at
that
home.
You cannot be in the army. So I went to the army as I finished my high school. It was in August. 3 months after, I was already in my uniforms. I was recruited to the infantry. So I was part of the infantry. There's many divisions, or I say like many units, and I was one of the units in the infantries. I was there for 3 years. Part of it, I was like also a commander. So I was a commander soldier. I had my own 12 soldiers under my wings that I also taught them, and like, you know, my own class. They call it like class. You know, I had my own students. I'll say, you know, like my own soldiers that I trained them and teach them how to be prepared and ready for a battle. But everybody have to be in the army.
That sounds exciting and terrifying at the same time. I have to say, like, okay, so again, just comparing my experience when I was in Israel, I have to say I felt really safe there, despite what the travel advisory of Canada said, you know, with all the what do you call them? The disputes going on with the other countries surrounding Israel. I was a little bit nervous to go, but when I was there, I saw men and women younger than me walking around in their uniforms. They're carrying guns on the street. And I just remember thinking like, wow, I actually feel so safe here. Like, it's all good. They're just going to protect us.
Don't get trained very well, of course. You don't get those rifles if you don't do a good train. And specifically the infantry or the people who's like specifically going with tanks and whatever. But yeah, they get very good trained and you do feel safer. I have to say that I know sometimes there's a lot of they give some warnings about going to travel in Israel.
Yeah.
But most of this dispute is only in small parts of Israel. So in the mass majority of Israel, you don't feel any you're not worrying about anything else. Like you don't really fear for like your
Safety.
your safety. So you do feel like your safety is something that
Mm-hmm.
you have it. It's not something that you need to worry about. There is some places in Israel that you not recommend to go, and then you can find yourself like in the middle of like conflict areas. But
Mm-hmm.
for like 95% of Israel, it's really safe, and you never feel it like when you were in Jerusalem, right?
Oh, I felt so safe. Like everywhere we traveled, because we would take day trips out and they would be like an hour out of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Because I keep forgetting, like we're not in Canada anymore. So to drive out, to maybe the northern part of Israel, it's like an hour and a half drive versus, a 4 hour drive here or 5 hour, right? But everywhere we went, I just felt so safe. It was incredible. And I just thought, man, there's really something to this. And it made me have an appreciation for these young people that are serving in Israel's military. I just think, well, my hat's off to them, honestly. I admire them so much.
And I have to say, I'll just add that I've spoken to a lot of people who did go to Israel as tourists, who have nothing, like they're not from Israel, they don't have family in Israel, they just came to tour Israel, and everyone is very surprised at how safe they felt. Like that's one of the things that people say, I'm so surprised, I felt so safe. So it's always nice to hear that feedback, to know, because you're right, the trip advisors and especially coming from Canada, there's a lot of warnings, and there things do happen in Israel. So sometimes are more safe, sometimes are less, but the general feeling, especially for tourists, it's super safe feeling.
Totally.
It's also one of the reasons that you want to do that and give back like what they give to you, because when I grew up, where I grew up, I felt like those soldiers were like keeping me safe, right? I
Yeah.
was only a kid in high school, or even when I was in elementary school. Those kids are 18. You knew, like, for all my life, I knew that I'm gonna be 18. I'm gonna be joined to the army, and I said, once I'm gonna be joined to the army, I will give back what they gave me. So they
Yeah.
protected me when I was a kid, and this is my time to serve and protect them for the next like 3 years. This is how I felt.
Oh, that's awesome. So do you view the IDF then as a rite of passage for Israelis, or is it just something everyone's like, ugh, we got to go do that? Or are they just really excited?
I think it's both, to be honest. I think it's
Oh,
both.
okay.
It depends
Depends on the person.
it depends on the person, depends what you're gonna do, like what is the job that you're gonna do in the army. If it's gonna be really boring, like or if you do something that doesn't intrigue you, or like make you think, or make you become bigger than yourself, so you might find yourself like say, oh my god, like I'm wasting my time. But
Yeah.
if you learn from it, from the experience, and you're like, at the end of these 3 years, at the end of this tunnel, you finish and you say, oh my god, this thing changed my life, or these 3 years was like I'm like living in Israel for 21 years, for 3 years of it in the army, and those 3 years was the most significant times of my life, because it changed me from like from one corner to the other, to the other side.
Yeah. And what did you do specifically in the army?
So I was in a small, I'll say, I don't think it's called division, but like a unit called Givati, and
Okay.
I was like in the infantry. I was like training. I started to train myself. Like
Yeah.
I had my own commanders who trained me how to be a soldier, and
Yeah.
then I did like an actual course how to be a commander, and then I
Yeah.
became commander, and I took my soldiers with me to battle. And when they started, and it was I think 2006.
Yeah.
It was like Lebanon War II, and it was
Okay.
in the north of Israel. Then my soldiers were there also, and I was studying also with another group of soldiers from the beginning after the war. So this is what I did for 3 years. I was trained. I trained some people to get
Yeah.
to the front line, and I was in the front line just like a little bit, not like I was in the war, but not like in the front line. Like I was more in the training side.
Right. Okay. That's fascinating. That's fascinating. I have so many questions. I want to ask, like, what's your most memorable experience being in this section of?
Sometimes when I'm here in Canada and it's really cold, I'm thinking about like it's remind me of one of the times when I was, I think, 3 months in the army. It was January. It was January 2004, 5, and it was really cold. And part of the training is you need to get along because we did all the training in the desert of Israel. It's in the south. So when we get to the south, you need to the training is in the middle of nowhere, in the desert. So they took you and you need to walk for a couple of miles, and then you need to get your tent. Now you have like a piece of tent. It's not like a regular tent. It's just like a small tent. You have this size, and then your friend, it's like your, I'll say your partner, right? He also have one piece of the tent, and then I have one stick, you have the other one. Then when you connect them together, it's maybe this size of a tent. It's like, so you can also only cover your face until I'll say to the waist, yeah, and that's it. So the rest of the body is outside of the tent, right? It's like really small tent.
Like a waist in a tent.
Yeah, exactly. So we slept in the same tent together. It was freezing. It was freezing because you have to sleep together in the same tent.
Yeah.
We woke up in the morning. I remember it was November. It was really cold, and then we woke up. January. January. Yeah. We woke up in the morning, and then when I look at the desert, I was frozen, but the whole desert, it was like around 6 a.m. The whole desert was covered with small, thin layer of ice. Yeah. So if you actually hold the sand, you can see a small layer of ice that the dew actually froze during the night. So this is one of the most. So sometimes when it's cold here, I remind myself that I've been in colder situations in my life. And also, one of the biggest thing I've done in the army is like at the end of the training, you need to do it's like a journey that you need to walk. Now everybody goes together and walking together, and we walked it's something that you have to do at the end of your training. Yeah. And we walked for 14 and a half hours. You stop once an hour for 5 minutes. Every hour you stop for 5 minutes and you keep going. It's been 60 kilometers that I walked like by foot.
But you also told me you had a lot of weight on you.
And you have 10 kilos on you, of course, your gun and all your the vest with all the clips and everything. Like everything is with you. It's like 10 kilos, and you're walking for like 14 hours straight, no stop. Yeah, this is one of the.
So you eat lunch on the way?
You eat like you have 5 minutes. So every hour you stop for 5 minutes, and every 4 hours you stop for like 10 minutes, and then you eat something quickly because you cannot eat much. You cannot be heavy on your stomach, and you keep walking. At the end, you eat after 14 hours. So you eat before and then you eat after. You can eat in between like a gum or something. But
okay, so you said this was like a journey. So this is part of the training, or this is like actually a
this
mission?
Is the end of the training. So to get the certification to be like the soldier, like a infantry soldier or like a commander soldier, is what you need to do. So I think by today they made it a bit shorter, but at my time in 2004 we did 60 kilometers by foot, 40 hours nonstop.
Tom, what was that time that they told you have to walk, and then in the middle of the night there was like a animal, like a camel, or like what was it?
Oh yeah. Well, I did like I don't remember how to say it exactly. We did like
mapping, like you have to memorize the map.
Yeah, and then like in the middle of the night, I found myself like I met a donkey in the middle in the middle of the night. Yeah, that was a funny story. Yeah.
Did it start talking to you?
Yes, actually. Like I came close to him and I bumped him by mistake. Because it was like dark, like completely dark, and I was by myself by myself in the middle of the desert.
With a compass.
And I had a compass and I had like the walkie-talkie that if something happens, Right. And you need to get with a compass, you need to remember the map on your head, and you need to know exactly where you're going. It's like different dots, and then eventually you'll get to the right spot.
Right.
So in the middle of the night, I just by mistake I didn't even notice that he's next to me because it was so dark. But then I heard something next to my ear, like breathing. And then I turned around and then he started screaming at me. You know, like he started like really screaming at me.
Oh my gosh,
It's so many funny stories.
I think that's like to develop your natural GPS.
Yeah.
That's a good story. That's really memorable.
Yeah, so many stories. You know, in those 3 years, you're doing so much, and it happened. So much stuff happening to you. So yeah, there's so many stories.
Another thing I will say about the army that I've never been to the army, but from my friends, there's a lot of like love stories that happen because when you go into different units, from what I know is, you know, like you could come from all over different cities in Israel. So a lot of people get to know each other where otherwise they would never have met. Yeah. A lot of marriages come out of the army that way, and friendships form. So it's really like a type of summer camp, if you will.
Yeah, you're right.
A long summer camp.
Yeah, really long. It's not as fun, I'm sure.
Yeah. We laugh at it, but it's not that easy. You know, it's hard.
Well, no, I imagine, you know, walking 14 hours a day straight.
Yeah. You know, it's very different in here because as you finish kindergarten, you go to elementary school, and then you finish elementary school, you go to high school. And here in Canada, after high school, you go directly to do studying, or so you keep the studying. And in Israel, it's a bit different because right after the army, right after the high school, you go to the army. So it doesn't get easier; it's get tougher. So like if the teacher tell you what to do in high school, and then when you get to university, it's a bit easier because at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want if you want to go to class or not. So in the army or the IDF, it's getting even harder because you have someone in front of you. He's like only 1 year or 2 years older than you, and he's telling you what to do, and you have to obey the orders. Otherwise, you
belong to the country. You're the country's property.
Exactly.
You're no longer a citizen, and mentally you have to just accept that you belong to the country, and the country will do with you. You're a soldier.
And also telling you that, you know, that you are part of.
They tell you that. That's
if you harm yourself, it's like you harm the property of the army, and you can get to jail because of it.
Wow.
Yes.
So in a sense, it's like really community based then. There's no sense of individual here. No. It's all for the community, we, us, our.
Exactly.
Do you think the army had to do with that sense of community?
Maybe because everybody been in the army, right? And everybody been through this tunnel, like you know, you come from high school that you know you feel like you can do in high school. You know, you go to school, but you can still afternoon do whatever. You come into 3 years that everybody controlling your life. You like, and they tell you what to do from the morning till the evening every day, and you go home. Depends where you are, but when I was a commander soldier, I was like going home only once a month for 2 days or something like this. So something like that, you're going back home like every couple of weeks. So someone always telling you what to do. So there's someone above you always telling you what to do for like 3 years. So it's fun. There's a lot of experiences, but it's not that easy.
No, I imagine it wouldn't be. Yeah. We're not used to that here in Canada at all. You know, the mindset is after high school, you go straight to university. And I know that we talked about that before where, you know, the stages of Israelis, I would say, would be, you know, you've got your preschool, kindergarten, then you go elementary, junior high, high school, and then you're going straight into the army. And then after the army, you take a year off to travel, and then you go back and do your studies, or do I have that backwards?
No, you're right.
Exactly right.
That's right. Okay.
Some people take more than that.
I think what's more regular is because as a soldier, like you're so broke, like you have no money, and then you have to like just make money after. So you go, you do waitressing, or you do some kind of odd job to try to collect as much money as you can. You save every penny, and then you go travel. So sometimes it could take 8 months to save, and sometimes it could take 6 months. So you just it depends on your spending habits, and then you collect as much as you can, and then you go for like 6 months or 8 months. So it could be even 1.5 years to 2 years before you go back into the, you know, like try to settle down and do university and start your life.
So university sometimes started when you are 24, sometimes 25, depends, sometimes 23, depends. Wow.
And here in Canada, people are finishing university when they're 21 or 22 or 23, like in that age range. And then you just either you take a year off and go traveling, or you just go right into the workforce and that's it. But that's just so different than what we're used to.
In my story, at the end, after I finished the army, the day after I finished the army, I already had a ticket and I was on the way to Spain. I told myself I served my my time in the army. I gave back what those kids or the government gave, or I'll say the army, the country gave me, right? So I'm done with that. The day after I finished the army, I was on the plane already to Spain. I had work permits. I worked a little bit there. I saved some money, and then I went to travel a little bit more. I went back to Israel to work a little bit more, and then I went to travel in South America. So I've been in South America for 6-7 months. It was 7 months. Then I went back to Israel, and then I started the university a little bit. I just started university, and then said I'm going to go just a little bit more to India. I never been in India. I said I have to try India, and this is where our story is gonna connect.
And I have to say that there's very common spots for the after army travel. So it's super common to go to either South America, India, or Southeast Asia, like Thailand now, starting with Philippines and that. But back when we were at that age, it was mostly just Thailand.
Okay.
Or South America.
South America, South America, India, or Southeast Asia.
Yeah. Some people go to New Zealand and Australia. You have to go travel. That's the thing. It's part of our culture. It means that by the time you finish the army, everybody saves some money and can go travel. This is part of our culture.
Yeah, definitely.
The culture pushed you to go travel because you didn't have your own opinion or your
identity
for the last 3 years or 2 years if you're a woman, and then they release you to go, and they push you to go and experience and be a person of your own,
find yourself. You've been through this whole journey, it's been hard, it's the army. Go and be free, and for men, grow your hair, because you don't have to be short hair now. And grow a man bun and go and be.
Wow, that is way different than how majority of Canadians grow up and Canadian culture. So to me, this whole mentality is just beyond my thinking capacity right now. So Britt, for you were born in Israel, but you moved to Canada when you were 3 months old. So, but yet you have a heavy Israeli influence, even though now I probably won't get this correct, but it was your grandfather that was born in the United States, or and then your mother was born, was it in Canada or the United States?
So my grandmother was born in Canada, and my mother was born in Canada.
Right.
When she was 2, when my mother was 2, they moved to Israel. So my mother was raised in Israel, and then when she had me, she was I want to raise her in Canada. So we've been flip-flopping.
Yeah.
My grandfather's from Chicago. So my uncle, my mother's brother, decided that he's going to go with the American citizenship, and he raised his family in San Francisco. And my mom decided to go with the Canadian citizenship, and she raised us in Toronto.
Okay. Oh, so you were born in Israel, but you were raised in Toronto, really?
Since I was 3 months,
Yeah, since you were 3 months. Okay, so what was life like for you then, growing up in this very deeply rooted Jewish home? Is it proper to say Jewish, or would it be better to say Israeli home?
I think both is proper, because my family is both Jewish and Israeli.
Okay.
They're not religious, so that wasn't, really. It was more cultural, the traditions that we had, that we kept, were more for cultural reasons as opposed to religious reasons.
Okay.
But definitely very heavily Israeli influenced, for sure. My father is 100% Israeli. My mother was there since she was 2, so very Israeli. And definitely there was that feeling of two cultures, you know, what I was getting from school, what I was getting from home. So like bridging the gap,
Yeah.
and kind of also influencing my parents. And being a kid of a foreigner, you always kind of teach parents what this culture really is because they have it from a foreign perspective.
Yeah. So I imagine then speaking English, for example, you would have to help them with certain words and how to
Yeah.
say certain things.
It's their English was really good, always really good. My father, when he came to Canada, he took it upon himself to like read a lot of books in English and make sure that his English was proper. And he was very like, it was very important to him. And my mom, less, but somehow she got on. But it's more the accent, like us and me and my siblings, we would sometimes like catch them making like I don't know, botching the language a bit, and we would laugh at them. So you know, just all in good fun. But
Hmm.
just you know, having foreign parents,
Yeah,
it is what it
totally.
is.
What was it like for you though, like learning English and Hebrew? Because they're both, well, you're bilingual, and but you said you learned English first.
So my parents, when they first got to Canada, they struggled.
Mhm.
They had a hard time, like with the language. I mean, they struggled.
Okay.
They could barely like get an order at McDonald's without you know messing up. So they spoke Hebrew to me until
Okay.
I was 2.5 years old, and then they made a conscious decision to teach me English because they felt like oh no, like if this child goes to you know kindergarten and doesn't speak English, she won't mesh and she won't like you know fit in. So I remember them switching over the language. Like they would say tree in Hebrew and I would have to tell that back in English, like etz is tree, so they would say etz and I would say tree. And I remember them flipping the language over to English, and then from then just speaking English. I would hear Hebrew in between them, but they would address me in English, and they just wanted to give us an easy time. And then later in life, I reconnected with other Israelis in Toronto. And then 2 years later, I met Tom. So we started speaking Hebrew. And for some reason, it was never lost on me. The accent was never lost on me. And the language, the words just opened up. Like I had it in my brain. And then it was very easy for me to learn Hebrew, like relearn, I would say.
Yeah. And did you ever feel like growing up you felt different than your friends, or is it that Toronto's so multicultural that is everyone kind of is deeply rooted in heritage?
Yeah, there is definitely an amazing feeling in Toronto. I really love Toronto for its multiculturalism because, you know, you could be, if you visit 5 friends, you could be in 5 different countries, depending on which home they come from. Like you could have an Indian friend, an Asian friend, like just someone from everywhere. So you really feel that a lot of people come from like foreign parents. So in a way that was like, I did fit in, but definitely compared to a pure Canadian, you know, like generationally Canadian family, I did feel different, you know, like it's a different upbringing for sure. And
Yeah.
especially for like foreign parents to raise their children in a foreign language, foreign country, for them, like it's different as well. So I definitely did feel like I was raised differently than my Canadian friends for sure.
Mhm. And what cultural things did you and your family do that just helped uh, keep Israeli culture deeply rooted in your family?
So yeah, so my family is very like tradition. They like to keep the traditions of for
Holidays.
like holidays, but not necessarily for the religious reasons, more
Okay.
just because that's how they were raised. They like to sing the songs, they like to do the holidays for fun,
The
they like to
tradition.
be, you know, like have the foods. So we kept it, but not for like not exactly to the T. Whereas like for example, I believe when we raise a family, I would want it to be more with the religious impact as well, but yeah, like more like a little bit more.
Okay. So also drawing from my experience in Israel, um, this Shabbat, the day of rest, especially in Jerusalem. Like I don't know how it would be in Tel Aviv, but especially in Jerusalem, on Friday from sundown, so that would be like probably 5 p.m. to 5 p.m. the following day on Saturday, everything kind of shut down. So
Okay.
you've got like your store, like donaires, any restaurants, convenience stores, everything just shuts down for 24 hours, and it's like a day to spend with your family, a day of rest. Even the elevators at our hotel, I am not kidding, they stopped on every single floor, and I thought, oh my gosh, because they don't want you to take the stairs.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is something I grew up like that. So in my hometown, every day after, like, every Saturday morning, you can go in the streets, barely cars driving, nobody's driving in the cars, everything is closed, all the stores are closed. The only thing that opens is like the I think the synagogues,
Mhm.
but other than that, everything is closed. So like
There's like a cultural exception, like acceptance of it's Shabbat, so you can rest.
it's part of the
Whereas like
law.
yeah, it's part of the law. And like I feel like in Canada, if you told your teacher, like, look, I have a lot of homework, I only have one day to do it because I keep Shabbat, it would be like, yeah, no, you got to get your stuff done. Whereas like there's that acceptance that there is that day where you don't need to work, you're not obligated to finish, your whatever, you
Yeah.
know.
I really like Shabbat. I've started practicing that, well, with my family, but also just by myself as well. Saturday is the day of rest, and I have noticed that there is a huge difference in my life where I don't know, I just feel like there's more energy. I just feel like it's an excuse to just kind of wind down and just kind of turn off any technology and just rest. And yeah, I think that I'm better off because of it, if that makes sense.
Sometimes it's hard to say, okay, I'm going to put my phone down for like 20 hours or
Yeah,
24
I
hours.
never did that.
It's
Yeah.
really like hard to make that decision. But if you can, go with it
Yeah.
and
Committed, yeah.
commit to it, there's so much to gain because we are, so attached to our devices. And it's just, especially if you're doing it with a bunch of family and kids and, there's like cousins and everyone's playing and you play cards and you play games outside and throw a frisbee around. You can really, there's so much to gain by having like an innocence of tech-free Saturdays.
Yeah. Or even just an excuse. So mine might not be tech free now that I'm thinking about it, because I do like to binge watch on Netflix
Yeah.
too. So I'll watch some movies, but I just like will watch and then I'll have a nap and then I'll go back and watch and have a nap. So it's a really restful day. I love it.
That's how I do it because it's really hard for me to put down my phone. But I look at it the same way you do. And I think a lot of people do. Like they just see it as a day of rest. I don't want to work. I don't want to, like commit to any chores.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna forgo technology. It's only very religious that like really keep it fully.
Yeah. And so was it something like this that your family kept? Like, did your family
Our
keep
family
Shabbat?
never kept Shabbat. Just more of the major holidays like Passover, Hanukkah, Purim. Purim is the one that you dress up like the Jewish Halloween kind of. So
Okay.
we love that. Of course, we were kids, so we like had 2 Halloweens. Why not?
When is this Halloween?
It's
September.
March. March-ish.
It's actually
Because it's a Jewish calendar,
I
so
think-
it can
I
be.
think the holiday is on this weekend.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, it's this weekend.
On Sunday, on
this
this
Sunday, this coming Sunday is
Yeah.
Purim.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this holiday before, but I'm also learning that like lots of these holidays, because of the Jewish calendar, the year starts in March or April. Is that right?
Depends because the Jewish calendar is going by the moon and the sun.
Oh,
So it sometimes change sometimes, while the regular, let's say the regular, like the Georgian calendar goes only by the sun.
Yeah.
And like if we compare like the Muslims, a calendar goes only by the moon. So it depends how you go, but with the Jewish calendar, it's the moon and the sun, and yeah, it's sometimes fall on in March, and sometimes it's April. But yeah, this is the start of the year.
that is interesting. and it rocks my world a little bit because I'm so used to the year starting in January. So
Yeah,
to hear that, well, I guess it's no different than Chinese New Year too, because that's in February usually.
exactly.
So
So
not every culture does it the way that we do it, because I think ours was like, I'm just talking about like Western culture. I think it was kind of based off of the Roman calendar, if I'm correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
Anyways,
I still go by like the Western calendar.
yeah, of course, we go by the Western calendar, but the
And they
holidays
use the other one for as like kind of like a background, like
and
for
the
the other
holidays.
things. Like when's
Right.
your birthday? When's your this?
Yeah, so by if you go by the Bible, so the start of the year is in Passover, like it can be April, but today the Jewish world celebrate the start of the year in September. So it's usually in September. It's called the first of the year, and this is in September. Usually
like the head of the year,
yeah,
Rosh Hashanah.
yeah, Rosh Hashanah.
okay.
So this is in September.
Wow. Okay. So lots to learn. Very different is what
Yeah,
I'm getting.
really.
And so, Britt, growing up then with this type of culture, and then growing up in Canada, was there any conflict or collisions that kind of happened between the two, or would you find that they all were just sort of harmoniously?
Like if I would say it was 100% harmonious, there definitely were times of clash. Yeah, I just think it's very, very different. Like Israeli culture and Canadian culture is very, very different.
Yeah.
And I grew up feeling like in a way, I was missing out, or like what's over here, or kind of like sheltered from our true culture because my parents really wanted to just Canadianize us and like get things done.
Right.
In a way, they preserved a lot, but they also wanted us to fit in, and they wanted us to, get with it. So definitely when I grew up and I traveled,
Mm-hmm.
I went to Thailand. I met one girl who became my best friend for like 3 years, and she's from Israel. And like, I really felt like it opened up, like, oh my God, I didn't know this whole side of me. Like it really opened up my culture. So I felt in a way that I didn't really know fully that side of me until I grew up.
Yeah. That is interesting.
Yeah. And then of course I met Tom, who really like,
would bring out that
introduced
culture in
me
you.
to the music and even more of the things. And even still today, he's introducing me
How to read.
Like, so my reading was iffy at best, and Tom really helped me out with it. Now still can't write, but I can read thanks to him. And yeah, so I think like I'm still learning about my own culture. So it's very strange even now, being 31 years old and having two cultures. I totally have two cultures. Now I've embraced both. Also now I don't feel like, oh, why didn't I grow up there? As I did when I was a kid, because I would go there on vacation. I would be on the beach. I would like eat the amazing food. And of course, when you're on vacation anywhere, you feel like it's the best country ever. So now looking back, I'm like, wow, thank God I was raised in Canada, such a good country, like so happy. But from a kid perspective, I definitely feel like I was missing out.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask about that. Did you feel like did you maybe have a wish that you wanted to grow up in Israel because there was just so much deep culture embedded in you? Or was it just kind of like, I have two lives?
No, it definitely felt that way.
Yeah.
I definitely wished, vacation, I would go to this beach and the weather is amazing. And like, as a tourist, I think Israel is just the best. You can
it's amazing. I have to say, it's one of my favorite countries I've been to, and I've been to like more than a dozen, and it's I think the most memorable place, one of the most memorable places I've ever been.
And that's how I felt my whole life. And I was like, why don't we live here? And I didn't get it until I grew up and I realized, wow, Canada, maybe it's cold and maybe it's not as, like openly friendly, and maybe the food is not as good, but you know what? It's a really good country. This is where I want to raise my family, because it just has so much to offer in terms of stability, in terms of, things that Israel is still a very new country and very volatile. And, the stuff that kids don't see, but as an adult, I can see the pluses and minuses of each place. And like, obviously we decided to live here. So
I see Canada as like really,
it's an amazing country.
You said like you travel a lot in so many countries and you love Israel as like, as a go-to place to travel.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I've been in also 27 countries in my life.
Wow.
And I always say that Canada is the most beautiful one I've ever seen.
It's beautiful.
In terms of the views, also the people, but also the views and like, the forests and like, and the Rockies and the mountains and like,
There's
even
so much.
the beaches, everything is amazing,
But definitely as a kid who like I never liked the snow. I never connected to skiing. I never connected to any type of winter sport. Of course I was going to love Israel more. So definitely I felt like, oh, I don't want to like, too bad we're being raised here. Like I had that feeling, but now looking back, I'm like, thank God. I made a good decision.
So you did not have to, just kind of jumping forward here, you did not have to join the IDF, I'm assuming. Instead,
I didn't in the end, but I did get a recruiting letter when I was 16 because I was born in Israel, and everyone who's born in Israel technically needs to serve. So my parents never, I guess, skipped. When you move your kids out of Israel, you can set it up where they won't send this letter. But because they already did send it to me, I was kind of like, I did have to do it. But then because I worked something out with them where they said, until I'm married, I can't.
You proved that you are not Israeli. You are living in Canada.
but they didn't 100% let it go. They said that I'm only allowed to go to Israel for 1 month out of the year until a certain time or until I get married. But then that went away. I don't even know, honestly. It's a lot of bureaucracy, but technically I did have to serve, but then I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a loophole, so you didn't.
There was some kind of loophole. Yeah.
Actually, what happens is that if you born in Israel, you have to serve in the IDF. But because she never grew up in Israel, so she moved when she was 2-3 months. Yeah. She didn't know the language. She didn't know the culture. So you cannot ask someone who is like, it's like taking someone from outer space and like shoving into someone like the army.
Yeah.
Fitting,
right? I was exempt, but my parents never filled the paperwork, so they didn't know I was exempt.
But eventually she was
eventually exempt. I got exempt.
Yeah.
Okay. So this all to say, you did not join the army, but instead you ended up traveling.
Yep. And everyone was like, all the Israelis I met on the road were so jealous. They were like, what? You're 18. I'm 22. I'm after the army. Like, oh, you're so lucky.
So what happened is this is exactly the culture, the Israeli culture in Britt's family is coming in exactly the traveling because that all this traveling, like I'll say, culture started in the 90s or so, but there was some here and there you can find some people who went travel. For example,
from our parents' generation.
Yeah, for example, my father was in South America when he was 25, and then Britt's father also was in India when he was like 26 or 7. So, and it was like really rare at the time. But then in the 90s, a lot of people went traveling after because flights become cheaper and like India like become more open to tourists in South America. So from her culture, they did push her to go travel, I'll say, like they did influence her to tell her to go travel, not go directly to university. So once she finished the high school, she knew exactly she was going to go travel, and she was 18.
Yeah, I already knew I was going to travel.
And how long did you travel for?
So the first time I went for 6 months. I went to Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And then I ran out of money because I was 18. And then I worked a little bit, and then I decided to go to South Africa.
Okay.
And then after that, I went to India, and that's where we met.
Yes. Yeah. Now we get to... where you two meet. What was that like? How and where?
We met in India. We met at a restaurant. So in India, there's a really, really, really like large, like I would say, a large amount of Israelis traveling. Like
tourists in general.
A large amount of tourists who are from Israel. Mm-hmm. I've had multiple occasions where the local Indian people who are on the tourist path have like literally came up and was like, Israel must be the biggest country ever because there's all of you are here. there's so many Israelis, but really it's just that the Israeli culture really likes to go to India. There's so much to learn, and there's a lot of relaxation, whether yoga or there's like a very chill spiritual vibe that after the army I think is very needed. So it's one of the high destinations.
It's a big country with a lot of people, and you can you can get, I'll say, lost in the crowd, and nobody knows who you are, and you can finally be in a place that you can find yourself by your.
But you also meet friends. You meet a lot of Israelis as well.
Yeah, they also travel in groups. Yeah, but if you want, you can always go by yourself, and
I see.
So anyway, we were in a restaurant and then we met.
What happened is I was 24 at the time, and I was in university, and I said I'm gonna go, as I said, for travel a little bit in India for 2 months. And then I think the second month I was sitting in a restaurant, and she was sitting next to me with a friend from, I think, Scotland, and they spoke English. And then she asking me in Hebrew. I was reading my book at the time. I used to smoke, so she asked me, "Do you have a lighter?" And I'm looking at her in Hebrew, and I'm like, "Do you speak Hebrew?" She said, "Yeah, I speak Hebrew." I said, "Okay, because you just spoke English, fluent English with no accent. I was sure you're or British or Canadian or American. I don't know, something." And she said, "No, I speak Hebrew. Yeah, I know, And we started to talk, and we didn't met that day. I told them we can sit in the evening, but then I went traveling some mountain. And I haven't seen her for 2 or 3 days. We talked a little bit, and then I haven't seen her for 2 or 3 days. After 2 or 3 days, what happened was there was a lot of rain, and I decided that I want to go do some like a yoga, let's say, like a class. And I got mistaken by the door, and instead of turn to the right door, I turned left to the left. There was another door on the left, and I just opened, and I found myself in the back of the restaurant, and they were sitting exactly there, like she and her friends and more people.
It was like a group of 10 people at that point that was sitting.
And then she said "Oh, there you are. I haven't seen you for 2 or 3 days, since we met the first time." I was like, "Okay." So I told myself, I guess yoga is not going to happen today. So we sat and we started talking, and then we sat for 6 hours, I think.
Yeah, we ended up hanging out the whole entire day. Just talking and getting to know each other.
My side, because I was on the way to a yoga class, but Britt was actually on the way to. She was supposed to.
So from my side, I was. It was like a monsoon. There's no going anywhere. It was crazy raining. So I was supposed to climb a 20-minute climb of a mountain to go to another restaurant and meet people that I had met at a Friday night dinner, at a Shabbat dinner.
Yeah,
we were supposed to meet up. But then obviously it was raining so hard that I was like, whatever, I'm just going to go to this restaurant that I've been going to for the whole week. It's good. I just want to stay dry and stay out of the rain. And then we ended up, there was a bunch of people that, one person came and sat, and that's how it is when you're traveling in these places. We ended up being 10 or 12 people. And then Tom walked in and I was like, "Hey, how are you?" And then we ended up sitting and talking, and that's how everything started. We talked about life.
Everything in general, when you have so much time, rain is outside, you only eat, sit,
and self-reflect and meet people, and that's all you do on these travels.
That's what you do. Yeah.
We ended up talking. I remember after 5 hours, I was like, "Wow, we have a lot in common. We should get married and have kids."
She said it as a joke.
As a joke.
She said it as a joke at the time,
Which is funny that now we're married.
Manifested in real life.
Yeah.
So that day we were spent the day together. We've been in a sitar concert.
Yeah, in the evening we went to a sitar concert. Once the rain subdued a little, there was a local sitar artist, and he played with a bunch of, it was a very cool environment. We went in, it was all dark, and there was a guy playing sitar. It was very cool.
What is a sitar? Sorry, what is this?
It's like a guitar, but it's different shaped a bit.
It's much bigger, and it's an Indian instrument.
Yeah.
Made in India. It's a big guitar. It's
very cool
really
sound.
Big guitar. Yeah, very cool sound. Yeah. Very unique.
Okay.
And then we sat and we talked all night, and we figured out that we're gonna. The following morning, I asked her if she wanna keep traveling with me, and she said yes. Now in India, or when you're traveling or backpacking, or specifically in India, or even when I was in South America, you have your own room, right? Like you rent your own room in the motel or whatever.
I'll say before you continue that at that time I was with my Scottish friend. She and I had traveled for like 6 days together. So we were sharing a room at that time. And that's how it is. Like you share a room with, because you're trying to save money and you're pinching pennies.
Like 2 people, you can share a room.
Yeah.
And I was by myself, and I told her, you want to travel with me? And she said yes. So she moved to my room, and then all our traveling together, we stayed in the same room to save money, right? So basically, since the day we met, we lived together since that day.
I always say like we got married from the day we met because we lived together from the get-go. I remember like 4 or 5 months after our travels, we were both in Israel because his mom was like, hey, before you continue, I need to meet this girl because like you've been spending all your time with her. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll go to Israel and it will be great. And I remember telling him like, you know, you owe me a first date because we never dated. We just lived together the whole time.
What a great story. Like to think that you guys met in India, in a restaurant in India, and you joked that we should just get married. And what did you guys married? And how long was that after that first meeting?
So like 5 years later, we got married.
In the restaurant where we met, we actually took we loved the restaurant, we loved the place, and we fell in love there. So we took a picture of ourselves, and we loved the lady who was in charge of the restaurant, the owner of the restaurant. So we gave her a picture of ours. 3 years after, we came for the second round in India, me and Britt.
Yeah.
We've been in the same day, like our anniversary, at the same restaurant, the same place. We met the owner, and she remembers us, and she was so nice, and we gave her another picture.
So she added on her.
Yeah, and then so I came to India only to travel for 2 months, but because I fell in love and I didn't want to come back also to university and everything, so I said, it's or I'm going back to my life, then I give up on, like, you know, the love of my life. I give up on her.
By that time, we were like so madly in love.
Yeah, or I'm staying with her, and like, you know, whatever will be, you know. So instead of coming back to home after 2 months, we stayed together. I stayed in India for 5 months. So like I extended my stay in India for 3 more months. We traveled together, and then we've been in Israel. You know, my parents met her, and she told me, like, because I ran out of money too, and she said, like, I've been in South Africa before. If you want to come with me to South Africa, you know, I had some work there, we can work there. I said, cool, you know, why not? I was 24, she was 20. I said, you know, life is big, why not? You know, I just gave up, like, not gave up, but I left everything I did, like university or like my job. And I found myself in South Africa with her after like 6-7 months we were together. We actually got married 5 years after this meeting. Like we got married, we met in India, and 5 years after we got married.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys ended up in South Africa, and you said you lived there for, when we first met, you mentioned that you lived there for like 6 years?
5 years.
I lived there for 6 and Tom lived there for 5 because I was there for a year before I flew to India.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, you have to come back with me to South Africa because it's such a cool country. Like you'll find work. Don't worry. It'll be fine. And he did. And like we ended up living there we thought we were going to live there for life.
Yeah.
We were like this close away to getting citizenship, and everything was like almost set where we would be South African, and we were just like super set on South Africa. But eventually we felt like we hit a wall, and we felt stuck because both of us were foreigners, and we were like constantly, you know, trying to make it work and get, you know, doing what we can as like permanent residents, but not as citizens. And we, at some point we felt we like had that feeling like we're tired of being tourists. We want to go somewhere where, you know, it's a home.
Yeah. Right.
It's safe, right? Because when you think of family and things like that, you really want it to be safe.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so then that brings you back to Canada.
Yeah. Best decision we ever made.
So in 2015, I think, Britt said, like, let's move to Canada. Took me like a day or two. We said yes. And then we both moved to Canada, and we got married. We stopped on the way. We got married in Israel with all my family. Her family came. She had a lot of family also in Israel because her parents live in Canada, but her grandfather and grandmother, all the cousins, all the uncles, everybody lives in Israel, right?
Yeah.
All her roots and all her families is from Israel. So everybody came to our wedding. We had like a big, fancy wedding, and then we moved to Canada in 2015 it was.
Yeah.
Okay, and a quick question about this wedding.
Yeah.
Um, was it the traditional type of wedding where you
Yeah.
step on the glass and
Yes.
mazel tov, or
Yeah,
is that
Mazel,
something? Yeah. Okay.
Mazel we had like
That's
200,
exactly it.
250 people in the wedding. It was a
300.
yeah, or something like that. It was a big venue and with a lot of food and drinking and yeah, you celebrate the whole night. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of some, like, again, this is only what I've seen on TV, so I don't know how accurate this actually is. But there's a point where, is it true that they lift like the bride and the groom up on a chair and they're like dancing with them?
And
And
that's not only like in Israel, that's like across the board in all of Jewish weddings or special like bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs. They always lift
Yeah.
the like
We do it even in the holiday, in happy birthdays, you know.
yeah,
In
sometimes
birthday.
you could do it in a birthday,
We do it in the
but
birthday.
definitely like for weddings, you lift the bride and groom in the chair and then
Yeah, dance with them.
it's fun.
that's so cool. That's so interesting. What other types of traditions are in a Jewish wedding?
Definitely the glass. The man breaks the glass.
You need to do all the blessings. You need to put the ring on her finger. Yeah. Yeah, and then like
what else is there?
A lot of food, a lot of drinking.
Definitely, I would say that like the wedding is judged on the food and the music, but mostly a lot on the food.
Yeah,
the food has to be fantastic. So when you go to like venues, you have to make sure because everyone will talk about the food after.
Yeah, and the dancing. There's a big DJ with a lot of dancing, and yeah, you dance until like 2, 3, 4 a.m. You know, you celebrate all night.
It's a big party.
It's a big party. Yeah.
I know, like I haven't even ever been to a Canadian wedding, but I know from my friends who like explain it to me. It's so funny that I've never been to a Canadian wedding and I grew up here, but and I've been to a lot of Israeli weddings in Israel, but I know that here it's more of like a reception and everything's very chill and there might be dancing, but in Israel it's like you come to party, like it's gonna be a party. Yeah, we have the traditions, and you know we the actual wedding takes place under a chuppah, which is like a shelter almost,
right?
That is made from like 4 sticks and like something on top, or it could be like a built one, which is like more sturdy. Either one, but that's in Jewish religion.
Okay.
That's a tradition.
And everybody's celebrating and having fun. You can find a situation where her far cousins that I never met in my life dancing with my grandma. She's 80. You know, like you can find like
it's a party and a half. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a party and a half. Yeah,
that sounds like so much fun.
Another thing I'll say about like modern weddings in Israel is that like you don't even know half your guests. Like it's mothers, you know, work friends and fathers' work friends, and like it's just such a party.
Yeah,
like we had to go around and say thank you, you know, like before the dancing starts, because once that happens, there's like, you know, everyone's drunk. But before that, we go around the tables, and I remember thinking like, wow, I know like 20% of these guests.
Yes. Well, okay. So then I got another question about this, because I've heard, for example, in Italian weddings, it's normal to have tons of guests, like huge weddings, 300 plus people, but they all bring a huge monetary gift. So it's like it could be $500 or $1,000 or whatever. But that in itself, you're getting a big wedding and you have to pay a lot. But then the people that come, they give you a big money gift, and it sort of pays for the wedding and then some. Is that the same in Israel?
Yes. I would say, speaking of Italian culture, there are a lot of parallels between Israeli culture and Italian culture. I would say in the warmth, in the food, like importance, in also, I guess, the monetary gifts. There's definitely in Israel, we give money.
Israel wedding can cost approximately, I think, between $40,000 to $60,000 Canadian dollars. So depends on what you want.
Can end up making a little bit, or which is nice, because then you start your life not in debt, and maybe with like even just a little bit for a good start. It's normal to kind of average either losing a little bit, making a little bit, but never extremes. So you kind of know, like, have a good party, your loved ones will, and you know, you bring the best food and you bring the best everything. So people think about it like, they're paying for their meals, right? They're coming to a party that you set up for them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, I think it's a really good system because you end up, like not in debt, not starting your life in debt. Personally, I like the system of the money gifts, but.
Wow, interesting. So you guys got married in Israel, then you moved back to Canada.
Yes.
Britt, I would assume that you had already a Canadian citizenship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tom, was it hard for you to immigrate to Canada?
It was my first time I came to Canada. That was my first time. Britt moved back, but
he never was here before he
I never
immigrated.
been in Canada before. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just came like,
brand new.
Brand new, yeah. And it wasn't hard. If it was hard for me, not at the beginning, because we had like Britt's family and everybody was with us, around us. But so I felt like more welcome because I had like a family. Britt's family is like my family.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel that it was that hard at the beginning. It was hard for me to like getting where I am today, of course. But
and I think like everything was moving like fast along, like in terms of bureaucracy of getting, like his work permit, his PR, his citizenship. I think today, right now, like with COVID, it would take so long to get things done. Like, but now, like he's a citizen and everything's, set. So it's really nice that, right away, we started the process right away because we were already married. So I said, like, why wait? I think within 3 months, he got a work permit. And then I think within like 2 months later, he was a permanent resident. And then last year he got his citizenship. Just before the new year.
So that's a speedy process then, because I've heard other cases where it took a really long time for an immigrant to get permanent resident card or even their citizenship. Do you think that maybe it would have something to do with the fact that you two were married when you came back to Canada?
Also because we got married, also because we have a long history before we came to Canada.
Yeah.
We have a 5 years of history. We can show
Facebook
pictures.
photos. They asked for that stuff, right?
We can show pictures from like 2010 when we met and, everything we had together. So, and all the places, we had so many places we lived together in South Africa. So we had so many contracts that we both signed the contract of the leasing of the apartment. So we have a long history.
The proof was very quick, to get approved.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there was any investigation needed because we didn't know each other only for a year.
Exactly.
We had 5 years of relationship under our belt with lots of pictures of different travels. So really quickly they were like, yeah, okay, this is legit. Check mark. Move it forward. And we had a lawyer too. Like there was like a stack of stuff to do. And I was like, I'm not doing it. Like I want to pay a lawyer. They can figure it out. And like, that's what, they're an expert. I'm not an expert. And I think that really helped to get things done quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And so, Tom, what was your first impression of Canada? I assume you guys landed in Toronto?
No, we landed in Victoria.
I landed in Victoria because my parents moved to Victoria, and then Tom surprised me.
By the time we used to live in South Africa, our parents moved to Victoria. So right now they live in Victoria with our brothers. And I surprised Britt, yeah?
Yeah, I really wanted to like meet him in Vancouver and introduce him to, like Canada for the first time. But I think he really wanted to surprise me. So I moved 2 weeks before to set things up. Yeah. And he came like 2 weeks later and we moved into our new apartment that I found us the day after. So it was like very seamless because he wanted to spend just like a couple extra weeks with his parents, with his family. Because when we came for the wedding, we were there for, I think, a month.
Yeah, it was a month. Yeah.
And there was just so much to do, like, to prep the wedding and give hand out invitations by hand and go to all these places. So I think he just wanted some downtime with his parents after the wedding.
Right.
In the meantime, I set things up and then he surprised me. He like walked in my parents' door and I was like, oh,
hello.
You're going to join us today.
Surprise, yeah.
And so he kind of had his own like experience landing in Canada for the first time without my influence at all.
Yeah, Vancouver and then Victoria.
Montreal and then Vancouver, right? No. You flew. Yeah, you flew.
Wow. Okay, so you went all the way from the east side, Britt. Your family went from the east side all the way to the west. That's already a big change because there are huge differences between the east and the west in Canada. Yeah. And so Tom's first experience was in the west.
Yeah.
So what was your first thought being in Victoria?
I liked it. I came 2 days before Canada Day, July 1st.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I loved it. It was amazing. It was hot. There was so many people in the streets, and there was
so pretty in Victoria.
So many tourists, and in the summer it's beautiful, and it's so many lakes, so many like animals that go running
deer
wild.
And like squirrels. He
Exactly.
was like, look,
Squirrels,
and I was like, yeah, it's a squirrel. I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
we don't have squirrels running like that in Israel, or even
donkey. Remember?
Yeah. Exactly. So I found Victoria very amazing. It's a beautiful city. When we go visit our family, I love it. It's a beautiful city. Even the winter wasn't that hard. There wasn't snow.
Just rainy.
Just rain. Yeah, but I really loved Victoria. That was my first impression, and I loved Victoria. It's really nice.
Wow.
People are really nice. People are really quiet. Everything is so slow, to the good and to the bad, but it's very slow.
Yeah.
Yes. It's kind of it's the place where people go to retire, Victoria.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's why we left. We needed a more fast-paced environment. We tried Vancouver, but then we got opportunities in Edmonton, and then now we're here. But I think we're going to end up in Toronto, most likely.
Yeah.
But it'll happen.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. And so what do you guys think about Canada? Like, what, in your opinion, does Canada have to offer that other countries don't? And I'm just, like thinking about South Africa, Israel. Yeah. What do you think about Canada?
Definitely, I would say that all the very important stuff Canada has to offer. Medical, security, education, like all of these things that when you're a kid, maybe you're like, oh, that's just like dry nonsense. Like, who cares really? But these things are very important.
Even when we've been in the States, I think it was before COVID, that was my first time in the States also, and I realized that I liked Canada better because I did find that it's more safe in terms of or if it's guns, or if it's robbery, or even education, or how do you call it, the health system. And we can see it today with Corona and everything. The health system here is amazing. Canada is more, I find it a little bit, it's like capitalist, but a little bit more socialist. They take up care about their citizens.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that in Canada, that Canada really take care of their own citizens, and they want to make sure that everyone is getting along, or not getting along, getting forward in life.
All the needs are always met.
Exactly.
In terms of what the country does for its citizens. All this, it's so important. And as we get older, we can appreciate those fundamentals even more and more, and that's why we ended up deciding Canada is the place to raise children. There's just no other country that compares to the opportunities and to these basic, in my opinion, fundamental human rights that this country has to offer. It's amazing. So in terms of all that, Canada is just knocks it out of the park. And then also culturally, I find it's a very open, especially in places like Toronto, where I think we'll end up such a multicultural city with so many things that you can absorb and learn. And there's just it's such a cool city to grow up in, or to raise a family in.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll be missing anything. And if we feel like maybe we need a hot, vacation, there's so many things around. Mexico,
vacation is easy to take,
or whatever, it's not a big deal. So I think if you kind of work on the things that Canada maybe is missing a bit, like some hot beaches or whatever, if you add that into your life and make sure that you take note of that and do something about it, then you can really have everything you need with Canada as your home base.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Britt and Tom, for your insight and for sharing your story, what your life was like in Israel, Tom, and what it was like growing up with, heavily influenced Israeli culture, Britt, and just even how you two met in India. That's a really cool story. So thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you liked hearing this story, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. Immigrants of Canada is a show that is financially funded by people like you. If you feel led to contribute financially, please visit www.immigrantofcanada.com/donate. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.